Hey, what's up guys? Sir Emanon here, bringing to you today a updated Lunalight Orcust deck profile that I actually took to a regional qualifier yesterday in Brooklyn. So there were 421 players, and that meant that there were 9 rounds of Swiss, 48 invites, and I finished with a 7-2 record, ending up in 24th place. Slightly unfortunate tiebreakers once again, but I will put the standings sheet on the screen, and you guys will get to see my name if you don't already know it. But anyways, yeah, this is the list that I was testing for quite a while with a lot of changes actually, from the Road to 1000 Dueling Book Rating series anyway. But yeah, a lot of theory went into this deck, just a lot of me sitting down, hashing out consistency issues, just being able to play through a variety of boards. The format is so wide open and there's so many things to account for that it's difficult to kind of just check for the field. But I did the best with what I had available and with just quite a few updates to the way I approach the build in general. I feel like I came with a pretty good all-around list to at least combat the meta. I had a much more difficult time against Rogue, which I'll get to in a report later on. If you guys do want to see a detailed regional report in video form, which I will use replays on Dueling Book to kind of just give you guys a visual, sort of a guide, I guess, like to help follow along. Make sure you let me know by liking this video. If we reach 40 likes in this video, then I will be doing that one, the report that is. But anyways, this is the deck profile that I took, and we'll get right into it without further ado. So I do want to preface this by saying that this actually, spoilers, this actually did end up being a bit more of an Orcust list than a Lunalight list, as far as like the traditional sense of Lunalight builds are concerned, but it does still use Lunalight cards at its core in order to achieve its win condition, and I'll kind of explain my thoughts as we get into it. So we got 3 copies of Lunalight Kaleido, and I'm going to do something a bit different with this video. I'm going to actually just have the full card text here on the right side of the screen, like the image, so that if you guys aren't familiar with these cards, or like you're new to the channel or anything, you guys can just read the cards as I explain, because I'm not going to really be explaining the cards themselves, but just sort of more the theory. But anyways, yeah, 3 chick, that's pretty standard. I feel like I don't have to explain that one too much. It's your graveyard setup, can't be Ash, not once per turn, everything that you want in a card pretty much. 3 copies of Lunalight Tiger. This card is your soft once per turn monster reborn. Because Ogre is now more prevalent in the format, it does kind of suck. Like, beforehand, it was fine if you got Ogre because you got the summon anyway, right? But now if you get Ogre, it gets a bit harder to utilize Martin and Zephyrs, especially if you don't have access to another one. So, like this card being Ogre, you kind of have to account for it. It did get Ogred for me a couple times in the tournament, so I actually do have some ways to alleviate it, and that is partially where the Orcust engine kind of comes in, helping you to be able to play through that, because that is just kind of a free hand trap that you don't have to worry about. But yeah, 3 copies of Tiger, obviously very, very staple here. 2 copies of Lunalight Yellow Martin. Yeah, I don't think this ratio is really going to change for me. 1, I feel, is not enough because of the fact that if you happen to draw it, then your whole combo kind of just becomes dead. But also, like, you banish it quite a bit when going for the Orcust combo. So just being able to have a second one to grind for the following turn is, like, super, super key. Because you won't always be able to get it back. The primary way you would get it back is with the 1 copy of Emerald Bird, which I still am an advocate of playing. It's just another additional level 4 to send off of the Kaleido Chick if you run out of targets. And because I am playing the Nyarla, it is nice to be able to have the extra utility that Emerald Bird offers in its second effect. And its first effect can sometimes come up, not too often, but in niche scenarios off of like a Perfume or even a normal summon, just to get a Martin or a Serenade Dance out of your hand, and so you can continue playing. But these are actually the only Lunalight monsters that I am running in this deck, so that's a total of 9. The deck is still centered around these cards. It's just that these are the highest value cards in my opinion. Wolf and Black Sheep are very, very good, and the fusions are exceptionally good. The Leo Dancer is exceptionally good, but I didn't want to play more bricky cards when I was already running like some bricks in the form of the Orcust engine. Well, really only technically Symbol is a brick, but I didn't want to increase my brick count where I couldn't really get those cards out of my hand since I was blinding first with this list. If I chose to go second, then I would definitely consider playing the fusions, because breaking a board and then going to Leo Dancer is just game a lot of the time. But because I was trying to set up, I really felt that it was necessary to increase the consistency as much as I can. And the one thing is also that I was talking with some friends about theory prior to this event, and a lot of people seem to be heavy on the train of going second for like Orcust or Sky Striker or just any deck that wasn't like a big combo deck. A lot of people seem to be just wanting to go second and breaking boards. So I felt like if I also hopped on the blind second train because that was something I considered, then it'd be awkward if my opponent won the die roll and told me to go first when I could have just gone first anyway. And it actually happened in the event. I lost a couple of die rolls, but my opponents told me to go first, and I was like, all right, that's cool, because I wanted to go first anyway. So even bearing in mind that my opponents designed their decks to try and break boards, I still had a lot of ways to be able to create a lot of resiliency. And the key strength in the Lunalight cards is like Tiger and Martin being able to just provide you continual advantage turn after turn. So that is where the strength in the Lunalights were founded, even like in fusion-based builds. Like just being able to have advantage generated over and over, since fusion summoning is generally a minus, right? But like these cards just give you so many like resources just for free. So I felt like maximizing on the cards that really just gave you those tools to succeed really is the crux of the deck. So yeah, that is a bit of the premise behind why I chose to just run these Lunalight cards and not other ones. I understand that it might be a bit disappointing for those of you guys who are into the Lunalight fusions, because those are some really cool cards. But maybe in a future build if it calls for it. But for now, I'm sticking with just this. So other facilitators are Armageddon Knight and Dark Grepher. I still am a big believer in the Warrior package, simply because these cards offer so much utility. They are one very good for stopping or getting hand trapped, which is actually very nice in a lot of hands, because I am running a danger engine. So like if you get hand trapped like a Veiler or Ash, that's very good for you actually, because that just means that your Orcust engine is going to go through. And if your Orcust engine goes through, then you're going to have a very strong grind game regardless. Additionally, these are not only good for just sending Orcusts, but also for Lunalights if you have like a Tiger in hand. They just act as extra copies of Kaleido Chick. And there are some certain hands where if like you just send Yellow Martin with these, grab a Serenade Dance, then just pitch a Serenade Dance off of your Mermaid, then you get Kaleido Chick anyway and have the free advantage of being able to later on go into the Force Strix play. And speaking of the Force Strix play, I am still of course running the Zephyros, which I do feel is staple in this deck. Yeah, just being able to, like, one of the reasons for playing the Orcust engine actually, which a lot of other decks can't really say, is that the discard outlet is super nice to have. So like being able to reliably pitch this without having to rely on drawing a main deck card like Perfume, or goods to send like Perfume or Serenade Dance. Having access to this card being in the graveyard at like almost any given point in your first turn just makes your combo so much more explosive, and it higher your ceiling a lot. The reason why this is really important is not only, of course, to bounce a Tiger, but it's also type diversity for Curious. And the way I view this deck is kind of in three pillars, right? So you have the Lunalight cards, which by themselves just generate a lot of link material, a lot of rank 4 fodder, and just generally being able to grind and eventually get into the Orcust play as well. The second is the Orcusts themselves, which are kind of just their own engine that's contained within this deck, and it is its own win condition. And the third part is the cards that help you get to Curious. So like all three of these help you make Curious, and they help facilitate the way that you like get to Curious, like with alongside Dangers and stuff. But the Curious can help you send whatever you need, including potentially Orcusts. So like it all kind of like flows together. Lunalights help you get to Orcusts, Curious helps you get to Orcusts, but without Orcusts, like you could still come up with a pretty good rank 4 board or Appaloosa and stuff. So it's not like Orcusts are the be-all end-all of this deck, even though they are a centerpiece of it. If your Orcust, like if your memory gets stopped, unlike other Orcust decks, you still have plays, you still have your Lunalight stuff. And that's why I think this deck has an advantage over just like a pure like blind first Orcust list, right? Because like if your linear game plan gets stopped, you have another backup. And I think that's like really key. But yeah, these cards I feel I've been playing in this deck for a while, so longtime viewers of my channel already know that I'm a big fan of them. So next, we got the Dangers. So we got 2 copies of Danger Nessie. We have 2 Danger Jackalope, 2 Tsuchinoko, and then we have 3 copies of Danger Mothman. These are the only Dangers that I play. I am not currently running Bigfoot or Thunderbird. Those cards are cards I consider because, having going second utility is also very nice, but The thing is that like I actually last minute cut Firefighting Durimadol, so like that's a little bit of a less of an issue. Those cards can help you get into it, of course, but overall, I just wanted dangers that gave you advantage. The six like semi-limited dangers, they're good for just guaranteeing that you have a play on the field, right? And they're all different types for curious. They just help you extend. And Mothman in particular is very good in this deck. You want a lot of cards in your graveyard. You want Lunalights in graveyard. You want Orcusts in graveyard. Other dangers like Serenade Dance Perfume. There's a lot of really good stuff. Zephyrs as well. So like just even if Mothman like hits itself, it's not the end of the world. Um, and there's actually one game where I resolved like three Mothman, which is pretty funny, but like in hand of course. But yeah, these cards are just very nice for facilitating all the win conditions that I mentioned earlier. They help you dig for the Lunalight pieces. They help you go into Curious, and they help you, manipulate your Orcust plays if you have Orcust cards in your hand. So I think that this just bridges the deck overall together very nicely. And because there are some cards you don't want to draw, these help kind of increase your deck count. This is a 48 card list, so even though that might seem like a lot of cards, the fact that these are all just like generically good starter like upstarts basically, while putting bodies on your board and facilitating your win condition, it makes it so that like you're less likely to draw like hard draw your bad cards while being able to like dig for the good three ofs, right? So that's why of course that these cards are extremely good, and I think that this lineup was pretty good for the weekend. Overall, I think my main deck was very solid. Had some issues with the side and the extra, but I'm very happy with this main deck. So finally, for the monsters, we got the Orcusts. So we have two Orcust Nightmare, and excuse the proxies actually. I thought I wouldn't need as many of certain cards that I did need, so I had to kind of last minute borrow some stuff. So excuse me if this seems weird, but I had to proxy one copy of Harp Horror. We played one copy of Symbol Skeleton and one copy of World Legacy World Wand. So originally I was playing two Nightmare, one Harp, and one Symbol, as some of you guys have seen in the Road to 1000 series. But I ultimately decided, because I was cutting Wolf and Black Sheep from another build I was testing. I know my online build wasn't playing those cards either, but I was also testing a build with the Black Sheep and the Wolf. But because I cut those cards, I wanted some more cards that would facilitate and contribute to a grind game. The good thing about like Wolf is that late game, if you just happen to have access to it, you can just drop it and win the game. And I feel like, while Harp, a second copy of Harp and World Wand don't achieve that, what they do achieve is that you're able to just grind your opponent out of the game. World Wand especially is super good for putting back like Symbol Skeleton into circulation, and like Harp into circulation, without like relying on just Galatea shuffling everything back, because you do go through those pretty quickly. And I think that it allows you to just kind of like manage your resources in a different way, and to compensate for this and to kind of complement it. The second copy of Harp makes it so that if you hard draw it, then if your Mermaid also goes through, you have Nightmare and Harp, so your Nightmare can just send the wand instead, giving you another body, giving you more access to future Orcust plays, and you're guaranteed like a follow-up on your next turn, not only for your Lunalights if your Tiger survives, but also for Orcusts. So like your opponent has to like stop everything. They have to answer the Tiger, and they have to answer the Orcusts, as well as everything you have on your board, and that's like so much for them to deal with. It's kind of just crazy. So because of all this, I really do think that this sort of like quote unquote bigger Orcust engine, at least in terms of like Orcust hybrids like Warrior Orcust or Goki Orcust or whatever, or Mermaid Orcust, they don't tend to play all these cards. But I feel like just having that grind game, which Lunalights already excel at, but these cards sort of multiplying that factor by like tenfold, it just makes it even more crazy. But obviously these cards are just very good for what they offer, in that they give you a negation, they give you Dingirsu, which is insane, and that's pretty much all that you need in a deck that already wants Mermaid to discard Zephyrs. So that's it for the monsters. I believe that was 27 if memory serves. Yeah, I believe. Or yeah, it should be 27. But spell cards, we have 3 copies of Tenki, which is basic consistency. You don't have to explain that. 3 copies of Perfume. I see some lists cutting Perfume down to 2, and I'm not really quite sure why. Even if you aren't heavy on the Lunalight package, like if you're running the same amount of Lunalights I am, or even like not even playing Emerald Bird, the fact remains that this card's just super good to discard off dangers, and Like it's just if you have it with Chick, which you're already playing three of no matter what, then you just want this to be able to feed into like your entire engine. It's just crazy. It gets Zephyrs out of your hand, it gets Orcust out of your hand, and like a lot of the times you don't even use the danger effects in hand. I should have mentioned that, but like you discard them for value, which like you're only really using the dangers in hand if your hand like needs a play. But like if you have Chick Tiger and a bunch of like dangers, you can just hold the dangers for like later, or, like discarding it for other stuff. But yeah, like this is just like super good, and I would always run three of it. I have three copies of Foolish Burial Goods, just another Rhoda for the deck, honestly. Pretty good stuff. Send Perfume, and then send Serenade Dance to counteract Pure Thunder, so that you can go into your Tiger King if, you know, you play against Pure Thunder, which I didn't, but yeah, so the last cards are Rhoda for the Warrior stuff, and Foolish, which is just another awesome generic card. Good for sending Orcus, good for sending Zephyros, good for sending Lunalights. It does it all. So yeah. I think these cards have also been pretty standard in my lists for a while for those of you guys who are familiar with my content, so I won't spend too much time on them. And then the last six spells are the ones that kind of made my deck, you know, a bigger count, I suppose. So we have three copies of Call by the Grave. A friend like really wanted me to cut this card, and like I was considering it too because I wanted this deck to be 45. I thought 45 was a great number, both from just an aesthetic standpoint, but also just like, you know, statistically speaking, it was a very consistent way for me to, or number for me to have to be able to just get my Chick Tiger combo or whatever and still have enough utility. But I found that 48 actually was fine because I was originally citing the three copies of Twin Twister. So I was like debating between just like cutting either of these and like, or again, putting these back in the side deck, but I want to side other cards, as you'll see later. But overall, I think that both of these performed admirably well, and I don't think one outperformed the other. Call by the Grave, obviously for hand traps, but also it's just nice going second against certain decks. You really just want it for like banishing Gizmex in like Orcust, or like if you play Grand Maju, which I did. Grand Maju's everywhere, by the way, just don't sleep in that deck. Good for going second against Orcust to banish Jingirsu, good for going second against Pure Thunder to stop Titan, and it's good going first just to be able to stop your opponent's graveyard stuff if you don't need it for their hand traps. Good for stopping Ray. It's just an all-around very versatile card, and I don't think I would. I think I would play both of these again, honestly. Twin Twister. The reason I played Twin Twister was it is a meta call because I expected a lot of Striker, and I played a fair amount of it. It's also good because sometimes you just need the discard. Whereas like I know stopping like, or rather bypassing Dingirsu is important, like so that their Dingirsu can't just protect their stuff. But like Twin Twister is just super nice in like, you know, Striker and even like Pendulum if you're going first. So yeah, definitely don't regret playing this. And the last spell card is Orchestrated Babel. This card, you know, I think is pretty staple in Orcust hybrids. You just want to be able to have versatility in what you have access to. So Symbol Revived Dingirsu, excuse me, on your opponent's turn is, you know, another form of interaction that your opponent has to account for. And yeah, if you like draw your crescendo, you just want more targets as well. So yeah, definitely good stuff here. Again, I was very happy with my main deck. I'm not sure what I would change, if anything. Then the trap cards, we have the Lunalight Serenade Dance, which is obviously super good in this deck, not only as a goods target, but also because, again, I'm playing Yarla, so you want your Yellow Martin to have value when it can. And again, if you send the Martin off Armageddon Knight too, that works. So like just this card being able to be a free body, it's like another copy of Kaleido Chick 2 if you have dangers, if you like manage to pitch it. And that's another reason why Mothman is super good. We have a copy of Orcust Crescendo, just, you know, your negation piece that just adds to your whole board of ridiculousness. And then the last card, which I think I might have spoiled earlier, was Eradicator. Yeah, this is the card that I would do for my Curious Griffin combo, which was what I did most games is the Curious Griffin. Because again, I expected a lot of Sky Striker, and people who would make me go second, I felt like had ways to break boards in spell form, like Mind Controls or Instant Fusions, Mystic Minds, like Shadal Fusions. Like this just gets rid of everything, as well as being very good against like Striker and Pendulum. So definitely would play this card again. and it is the go-to choice for the Griffin combo. So that's it for the whole main deck. It is 48 cards and 18 spells, 27 monsters, and 3 traps. Alright, so for the extra deck, I need to get this a bit back in order. Alright, so we have one copy of Nightmare Mermaid, of course, for the Orcust play. So yeah, like the thing with this is that again, if this just gets stopped, it's not a big deal because you have your Lunalights to facilitate rank 4 plays, and you can always like end an Appaloosa as well. So like this card got negated a fair bit, and I didn't really have too much of a problem with it. And that's another advantage of like having multiple copies of Harp is that if you pitch Harp for cost, they're very hesitant to just negate this because like they're thinking, oh well, he already has the Orcus play, so like why bother negating it? So it makes things awkward for your opponent. I will say that like I was kind of afraid of the Silver Rocket Dragon if people played Dragon Link, or more importantly, if I played the Thunder Guard Dragon list, I was afraid of the Fusion Trishula because those cards can look at your opponent's extra deck and snipe cards out of them. So I was afraid that like not this card would be hit, but like if I just played Phoenix only, then they hit the Phoenix. I don't have Phoenix, and I can't get Mermaid anyway, so that's like a 2-for-1. So because of that, I played Phoenix and I played Cerberus. So this allowed me to not only have additional ways to get into Mermaid, but also it was just nice being able to like use Cerberus for the combo against like Striker if I knew like games 2 and 3 what I was playing against, and then like being able to Phoenix the back row afterward. It's like nice to just not have to like waste your only nightmare monster, or like if you're against like a combo deck or a deck where Cerberus is useful and a Phoenix is less useful in, then you can use the Phoenix. So like you can pivot towards which one. Oftentimes game 1 blind I would use the Cerberus first, but yeah, this way if they had the Fusion Trishula, they would get rid of the Mermaid straight up, which again not a big deal if Mermaid gets stopped, right? Because I have other ways to access Orcusts. So like, and Orcusts aren't just the sole win condition. So I do feel that I do feel like that this was a pretty solid choice, even though I didn't play against any of the Fusion Trishula decks or whatever. But yeah, I just felt like the theory there was pretty good. Excuse me again for the proxy, but I played 2 copies of Galatea. I thought I only needed 1 for the longest time, and I actually did cut the Longyusu. I was like back and forth on Longyusu a lot, but I ended up cutting it for the second Galatea and then other cards. Yeah, I often would just like go Galatea with a Orcus and like whatever, usually like Mermaid or something, and then use the Galatea and another monster for the second one, and then Symbol Revive the first one. And that's how I got access to like the Dengusi for the Eradicator, and then having the extra Orcus Link monster for the Crescendo. One thing I will say that I did miss with Longyusu is that I missed having it just as a 2500 Dark Monster to tribute for Eradicator. Tributing Dengusu actually kind of sucked because the protection effect is super useful for when they try and crack your board. And there were some games where it would have been very helpful for me to just have the protection there. So I would maybe consider just playing one Galatea, one Longyusu again. But it remains to be seen. Because like if I'm doing Galatea plus a monster for second Galatea, I might as well play Longyusu there anyway, right? So would probably consider playing that there. And then the final cards are Curious, very strong. Like if this card gets stopped, like I mean this card realistically probably wouldn't get stopped if I can make it, because there's so much other bait. Like I'm making Mermaid every single time before I make Curious, so like it's generally going to resolve unless I have like insane amount of hand traps. But people were really not as high in hand traps this weekend. Like there were definitely some running around, right? But people were just trying to break boards a lot, and I felt like I was resolving my combo a lot more than I feel like I should have going into the event. I played like 1 copy of Griffin. It's to complement Curious, but also like because you're setting Eradicator, you are a little bit susceptible to combo decks like that play a lot of monsters. So this kind of like helps answer that, because your opponents have a hard time getting into Griffin. And although Chick Tiger by itself can't really utilize Griffin optimally because they will have an extra monster zone above where Griffin points, if you have one more extender, Mermaid will be able to still be like above the Griffin, like in this configuration. So because of that, I do think that Griffin is just an overall very nice floodgate to have that your opponent really needs to answer. And if you leave the Mermaid on board, it's harder for them to punch over Griffin too, which is awesome. Like they need a really strong monster to be able to beat over it. And then the final Link monster, I'll just move this to this over here, was Appaloosa Bow with Goddess. So this was kind of a last second inclusion. It's not just to really play around Nibiru. As I thought, I feel it plays around Nibiru better in this deck, but it's just a good contingency plan if you do get stopped, because if your memory gets stopped and you don't have to have like an extra danger on board, for like your curious play, then you can just end on this instead, and it's also good all the time. Um, it's also nice like when you do hard draw Eradicator to end on this, because then you can go Eradicator this and have like Orcus Crescendo. So like you just have a lot of stuff that your opponent really can't deal with. It's another reason why I would have wanted Wangirsu with the Dingirsu to be able to stay on board, is that Dingirsu with this card is really really hard to out. Like your opponent can try and like bait out two of its negations and then normally like try and punch it over in battle, but if Dingirsu is stopping that, then well, they're kind of just out of luck there. So yeah, Appaloosa was very very nice for when you get hand trapped. It's good as it actually kind of can come up in the grind game. Like you can summon a lot of monsters with Chicken Tiger and Martin and stuff, and then just make an Appaloosa, and your opponent suddenly like has a really hard time just getting through that because they exhaust a lot of resources while you actually have a lot left. Oh, the last Link monster, I totally forgot I had this at the front. It's Borosaur Dragon. I'll just put it here. This is like your major win condition because I'm not playing the Leo Dancer and Panther Dancer package. And yeah, this is just really, really easy to make. Pretty simple stuff. Alright, so for the Xyz monsters, played the one copy of Dingirsu, obviously, for the Orcust stuff. 2 was not missed too badly, actually. And that's partially in part, that's partially because of the World Wand, because of the fact that like you're able to easily recycle symbol a lot better. And even though you're not actively attaching the symbol like turns 2 and 3 because you want to send stuff, like the fact that wand can just get it right back so you can do it again later, is super super helpful for grinding. So that made it a lot easier on this extra deck, so that I didn't have to play 2, because I wanted to play a lot of other cards. Gotta play one copy of Force Strix just to get Severos. It's part of a lot of the big combos. I played the one Tornado Dragon. I was almost gonna cut this, and I'm very very glad I didn't. This card I made a lot, and it's very very nice just to be able to like push through back row if you're going second prior to doing your Orcus combo. Because like yeah, again you have a lot of just bait. You have like the Nightmares. You have this. You have just your general play starters that your opponents are kind of afraid of and like curious and stuff. And like once you get everything out of the way, you can just freely do the Orcus combo and then just kill your opponent with Borosword, or you can like just do a lot of your standard Lunalight stuff and kill them that way too. So like this card is very very strong as not only a defensive option but as well as an offensive option when you're trying to break boards. Then we play the Nyarla and the Azathoth. So I know this kind of like conflicts with the Fusion Trishul idea because right like if they banish the Nyarla and we're out of Azathoth, like that kind of sucks. But at the same time, that means that your memory play is going to be safe as well as your Cerberus, so that's pretty good. But like these cards are super super good. Nyarla by itself does a lot actually, because there is a combo that I'll showcase later that you can do with this card if you have like an extra extender, where you can actually use both of its effects to be able to play around Nibiru, and that's what this is for. This is mainly for Nibiru, and obviously every other hand trap as well. But like because Nibiru was like super super hyped going into the event, I felt like I really really needed a way to summon Azathoth very consistently, and I needed to just bring this out, and I had to figure out a way to be able to make Azathoth prior to doing everything else, because like normally you just rush Force Strix, right, and then go into the Mermaid and then pitch the Zephyros, and that was good. But because you have to do this so early, right, because Chick is one summon, Martin's another one, this is the third, this is the fourth, so you have one more summon in between there of like a danger or whatever, and then you have to get into this right away, like there's no questions. And like yeah, I could make potentially an Appaloosa, but like this card is very very good as an extender in some of those combos like I was mentioning. It's good for enabling Martin and Emerald Bird if there are materials underneath it. It's super super awesome to have there, and this just gets around a lot of different things. Like if you have Appaloosa and your opponent has like multiple hand traps and you have to like stop them, then you have less Appaloosa negates for their turn. But like if you're able to do this, then you have like the same board you would have had anyway, and like you don't have to really worry about any of your opponent's hand traps at all except impermanence. So overall, would play this package again, absolutely. I think it's actually like mandatory to play this. And then the last card that I actually didn't really use a lot, but I kind of sort of regretted playing it, but like it's still a good card. Is a Tiger King. So I only really made this card just to um, consolidate my Lunalights from Tiger that couldn't attack anyways to just get more attack on board. That's actually all I used it for. I didn't play Pure Thunder. That was the reason. If you're expecting a lot of Pure Thunder, you definitely have to play this card. You have a very, very difficult time. Although dangers can alleviate that somewhat, but you have a lot of search cards like Perfume and Tenki, so you definitely don't want those cards to be dead. But I definitely missed Underclock Taker, surprisingly, which is kind of weird to say, but just a generic Dark Link 2 Cybers to help make Curious or like clear extra monster zones and stuff. Like it came up a lot surprisingly, and it helps to push damage as well. So I definitely missed having that. Another card that I kind of missed was Evil Swarm Nightmare, and I wanted to play it as well. I was sort of afraid of Super Poly, and Evil Swarm Nightmare with the Orcust cards is a little bit scary. But I do think that there were a lot of times that I could make a rank 4 first turn, and none of these are that great. Like Tornado is probably the best one, like just as a reactive option, right? But like I'm not maining the Dweller, hint hint. But yeah, like I kind of just wanted a stronger going first card. So like I in the future I would consider cutting this, and I would consider playing Nightmare or Underclock. But again, like I mean, you have to respect Pure Thunder too, so it's kind of a bit of a toss up there. And I know this video is getting a bit long, but hope you guys are enjoying the in-depth commentary on this one. So let's go into the side deck next. Okay, guys, so for the side deck here, the side deck was really, really clean looking for a while, and then I kind of ruined it, but there is actually some theory for this. So I played 3 copies of Fantastical Dragon Phantasme. Shoutouts to my friend Zaid for letting me borrow these. I do not own this card. So yeah, thank you for him for letting me borrow these, or to him for letting me borrow these. 3 copies of Nibiru the Primal Being. 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. And 3 copies of Red Reboot. I'll show the other 3 cards later. So these are the, like, I had Twin Twister in here, and that was my 15, right? It was going to be 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, going to be very clean. You have 6 cards for combo decks, and then Reboot and Twin are 6 cards for control decks. There we go. And then you have Phantasme that can just dig for any of them. The problem was that I wanted to side other cards, and I felt like Twin would have been a nice choice to main, so I felt like I wanted to just do that. Phantasme is not good in every case where you want like Red Reboot. It's only like the only deck I think that you would put in potentially Phantasme and Reboot is arguably Altergeist, because you know they kind of are a bit more reliant on Meliseek to get their multi-faker now that it's at 1. But like this drawing into Reboot isn't really gonna happen as much, but like this drawing to Nibiru or Dark Ruler could definitely realistically happen, as well as drawing like Twin Twister and helping like unbrick your hand. So there's like a lot of really, really good applications for just having Phantasme going second. Again, my list is blind first, so I don't want to be maining like any of these cards really, but yeah. So overall evaluation of these cards in terms of the regional, Phantasme was very, very nice. It's insane whenever it resolves. It's just crazy. I can't believe like I never played in a tournament with that card, and it's absurd. I was blown away by how good it is. It kind of deserves its price tag, I'm not gonna lie. Nibiru I resolved only one time actually. The other time it actually got negated by the funniest thing, which I'll explain in the regional report if I do decide to make it. But resolving this card is also really satisfying. Just blowing your opponent out if they can't play around it is super, super important. And that's why like Pendulum is pretty good because it can play around it, but not every hand can play around it. So, you know, when you have it and you can drop it, it's really good. I didn't play any, what's it called, like Guard Dragon decks, and even though I did play Pendulum, I won both those dice rolls, so my opponent scooped before they even showed me a card. So my opponents, or I never like had a reason to side this in, because like even though I knew I was going second, like I wasn't sure if it was, you know, going second striker or whatever, like because I mean I call spells every time with Eradicator, so the fact of the matter is that any deck realistically, like combo deck or a striker, could scoop to that. So like this is kind of a not as safe choice to blind in as sort of blind, but yeah. So I didn't use this at all, but I definitely don't regret having them, like having access to them, because if I did play against like a Guard Dragon combo deck, I would want this for sure. And then Reboot, I didn't actually resolve. I drew it a bit too late at times, but just having access to it just as a blowout card. These are like all pretty much blowout cards, right? Like every single one of these cards can just like single-handedly win you the game going second, and Phantasma helping you dig for them. That's like my logic, as well as like Twin Twister, which isn't like as big of a blowout card, but like it's a card that you can just draw. All right, so the last three side deck cards are what I replaced the Twin Twister with. So here we go. And I apologize for the proxy on one of them because it is a one of. And I didn't realize I didn't have it until like an hour before the tournament started. But this right here is a copy of Summon Limit. So Summon Limit is what I replace Eradicator for if I'm going against a combo deck. Again, I'm thinking to myself, like, a lot of the times I'm going to be expecting Striker, or even if it's not Striker, most decks play spells anyway, so Eradicator is good. And Griffin should be sufficient to stop the combo decks enough to where I can at least survive the turn and then OTK in my next turn. So Summon Limit I didn't want to main deck simply because I felt like Eradicator was a bit more flexible in what it allowed me to do. And I didn't actually resolve the Summon Limit combo, but it was nice to have and I would play it again in the side. The next card was Abyss Dweller. I could not fit this card into the main deck, and I actually didn't feel like it was strong enough to be like necessarily a staple to have at all times. Like, yes, it is coincidental that I didn't actually play against any Orcust, but the fact of the matter is that there's too many decks in the format for me to like justify binding Abyss Dweller right now. So I just didn't want to do it. But I definitely didn't want to play without this card, that's for sure. So definitely cited it. And then the last card was the most throwaway side deck slot in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh for me, and that's Galgaga Cowboy. I don't know why I play this. I don't play slow. I like hardly go into time. Like it goes against the entire fiber of my being to play this card, and I have absolutely no idea why I did. In the future, maybe this would become the Tiger King, and then I main deck either the Nightmare or the Underclock Taker, and that's probably what I'll be doing. Just like have two extra deck cards that specifically combat. Instead of this, it should just be this, like two extra deck cards that specifically combat the like decks that they're good against, and then having more utility in the main deck. Like this card, meh. But I will say, I actually put it in one time, game 3, but we weren't even close to time to just put it in. It was like 7 minutes on the clock. I like do my play, I make Cowboy, I make Dweller, and I make my Orcust play. I burn for 8 and I pass. And he makes his play, he clears my board, but he doesn't clear my Cowboy. So on my next turn, I Cowboy again, but then I have my Boar Sword anyway. So like this was never enough damage for me to like win anyway. So like there was no reason for me to play this card. It was awful, waste of a slot. Would not play again. Don't play this card, please. You don't need it if you know what you're doing. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this deck profile though. It's very, very in depth like I tend to do, and this one's like approaching 40 minutes. I apologize for that, but I had a lot to talk about this time around, and I think that the deck definitely changed a lot. If you guys want to see an updated combo video as well, let me know in the comments section down below. And if you have any feedback or suggestions as far as video quality in general, or the deck list itself, or anything like that, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. Thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to give it a like if you did enjoy and want to see more, and hit that subscribe button if you would like to see styles of videos similar to this one. And once again, thank you guys for enjoying. That's a bit of a presumption. Thank you guys for watching the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. And once again, if this video gets 40 likes, I will do the I'll do the regional report that's in depth with like my commentary, and then like I'll make my own dueling book replays so you guys can have a visual aid for it. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video. See you guys.